introduce, or should I just start? Okay. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Barnes. I am a staff attorney with Disability Rights Louisiana, and I am here today to go over the topics that were included at the training last month for school district personnel, and then to take any questions or comments that you guys might have. So I will just jump into it. Okay, so at the training, it was broken into 5 parts. The first part was an overview of the rights of students with disabilities and medical conditions in public schools, which included federal laws that apply. So that's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The focus, though, was mainly on laws, rights, and obligations that are included in the IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So among those is a provision called child fine, the school district's obligation to locate, identify, and evaluate all students within their district suspected of having a disability and in need of special education and related services. We went into a little bit about what special education looks like and related services, the evaluation process, and requesting a parent's right to request an individual or an independent educational evaluation. We touched on right to intervention and a student's right to receive a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment, which are both acronyms. So free, appropriate public education, a student's right to FAPE in the LRE, least restrictive environment, and what those terms mean, more details. We spoke about related services, which can include speech, occupational therapy, counseling, assistive technology. Let's see, a student's right to communication rights. So for those students with visual or audio disabilities, they have a right to receive communication that is as effective as the communication that other students receive. And then how these rights apply also to extracurricular activities. We touched on transition services and what it means when a student reaches the age of majority. The second section was focused more on IEPs. We went into greater detail regarding an individual educational program. So once a student qualifies to receive special education and related services, the next step is to create an IEP that is a document that outlines what accommodations, what modifications, what that student needs in order to receive a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. Included under this umbrella, we spoke about timelines that districts must follow to ensure that eligible students are provided FAPE, the written notice requirement that must go out to parents so that they are made aware of meetings and given the opportunity to participate, what the IEP team meeting looks like, its purpose, required team members, and the information to be considered in its creation and implementation requirements. We went into a bit more detail about IEP team members, specifically the importance of having an officially designated representative present to be able to authorize any changes to an IEP or additional accommodations. Then the third part was so a focus on the IEP document. We went through all of the standard content, which is about 14 pages, and opened the floor to questions to make sure there was an understanding about what is required to go into that document and what it all means. Then we spoke about extended school year services, or ESY, and what these services are. So special education and related services to students with disabilities that are offered beyond the normal school year, and what the eligibility criteria is to be offered ESY. So there are 3 different eligibility criteria groups. The first is for students who are at risk of regression or who have regressed, to either prevent them from regressing or losing skills that have been acquired during the school year, or to recoup lost skills. There's the critical point of instruction. This eligibility is found for students who are at risk of losing general education time, or at risk qualify under this category. Let's see. And the third category, special circumstances, which is more of a catch-all. And we went into what that might include. Then rounded it out with behavior supports and discipline for students with disabilities, and what a functional behavioral assessment is, why it's used, and its significance in identifying the why behind behaviors and in creating a behavior intervention plan that is for teachers and staff to assist with addressing, minimizing, and tracking behaviors that are related to the student's disability. We also spoke about restrictions regarding the use of restraints and seclusion, discipline protections under the IDEA and Section 504 specifically, and that a school district or that a student cannot be without educational services for more than 10 days per school year due to disciplinary actions. So a student with disabilities can't be without educational services for more than 10 days per school year. Otherwise, it would be considered a change in placement. We went into a little bit about what that term means, and then what a school district needs to do if there is a change in placement, and that is conduct a manifestation determination review to see whether or not the behavior in question is related to the student's disability. And if it is, in most cases, then the student, then that change in placement cannot occur. And there's a call for functional behavior assessment if one's not already been conducted, or maybe a new one needs to be conducted to dig into more what's going on behind this behavior, and then how best to address it and support the student. And then at the end, there was just a list of links to resources where you can go to access additional information. And that was supposed to include my email address, and I realized after the fact that it did not. So I'm going to, I can either provide that here. I believe I've provided that in the past, but I don't mind putting it out there again. And I'm also, as promised, going to follow up with an outline of all the information that was reviewed and provided at that presentation or the training, and include additional details on topics that were requested by school district personnel, which included additional information regarding RTI, or right to intervention, IEEs, disability-specific guides. Those are provided in Louisiana's educational bulletins, and I'm going to pull those out for ease of access. And then also, I need to still follow up on the use of DocuSign or electronic software where individuals can sign electronically, if that is suitable for use in instances like parents' written notice provided to parents. I still need to follow up on that and see if that is acceptable. Also, Disability Rights has recently updated our informational packets. We have one for special education that we recently reviewed and updated. So that's available to anyone, really, parents, anybody can reach out to us, and we would be happy to share that informational packet. We have others too that might be of interest, such as options for parents once their child reaches the age of majority, and if they are unsure about, I guess you hear from parents of concerns of protecting their child, not wanting their child to be at risk of making a decision that might negatively impact them. And so just maybe sometimes there are more restrictive means used to protect a child, such as an interdiction or a tutorship. And often there are less restrictive ways to make sure that that decision making is safe. And so we have a whole informational packet on that. Also, if anyone is interested, we touched on that a little bit during the training, but the packet goes into much more details. And that was it in a nutshell. I can see a few people in the audience not well enough to recognize faces, but if any of you guys were at the training in person, if you guys have any anything to mention, any comments or questions, and even for those of you who weren't there, Anybody has any comments or questions? Or requests for additional information?
Yeah, I have questions about learning more about the IEPs because we have been trying to get an IEP straight and we don't really know the laws because it wasn't really done correctly. And we did call a representative, but not in our area. We got in touch with someone that was not in our area. And I want to get the package on more information, and still till the day our IEP is just handwritten. And you were talking about a written notice and stuff like that. We don't get that. So, I mean, how can we go about navigating these IEPs so parents know more about it?
Sure. Okay. So the IP, that is a very important document, right? It outlines what your child needs, what the student needs in order to receive the free appropriate public education that they are entitled to. So yes, it's very important that you as a parent have an understanding of what that's supposed to look like so that you can participate in a meaningful way. And if you have concerns that the school district, that it is lacking and that you're not getting the information that you need. So there are a couple of resources. Families Helping Families is an organization that we often refer parents to that are seeking, knowledge. They have a number of offices located throughout the state. The one serving Natchitoches, I can look that one up. They're great for providing information and support to parents, just on a basic level.
Well, yeah, that was 7 in Shreveport. I did contact them, but it was during the very beginning of school, and it was very busy, and stuff like that. And my one question is about the IEPs. I'm so confused. The advocate I talked to said something about lifetime, but every IEP meeting we went to is not a lifetime. They normally hand you the IEP that day and you review it. So it's kind of hard when you're on the spot. You're reviewing an IEP the day of, and it's very difficult to, navigate these things because we don't see them daily. They do, but we don't.
So you absolutely can request ahead of time a copy of the draft or the proposed IEP from the school district so that you are given enough time to go through it and make a note of questions that you might have or concerns. That's definitely something that you can do, and that I would encourage to do. So that
when an IEP is permanent, does it have draft written on it, or is a draft just something we're proposing, or is it the complete IEP?
Permanent. Well, the IEP is an evolving document. So as your child's needs change, as they make progress, the goals need to be updated. A student, often when they enter school, as they move through school, their needs change. Maybe they don't need speech services anymore, or maybe they do need counseling. So the services that are provided evolve as the students' needs evolve.
No, my question was like, okay, say I go to a meeting and it's a draft, okay, and that's what we're proposing. So after the meeting's over with, am I supposed to just go off the draft? Is that my IEP? Or is my IEP later given to me? Which one do I go off of? That my child is going to get the services.
So in my experiences, generally, there will be an IEP team meeting. You'll review the IEP and make decisions as far as what is going to go into that document. And at the end of the meeting, that it's, it should be complete as far as what the student is to receive moving forward. So, and that goes back to the importance of having the designated representative from the school district present at the meeting,
Talking
so
about from the
that
school board?
the changes can be. Mhm.
Okay.
Well,
So what if they
so the
don't come?
author.
What if they don't come? Do they supposed to be at every IEP meeting, or if it's just the teachers and the therapists?
There's somebody, so it may not be an individual at or from the school district. It usually is. The officially designated representative needs to be present. Whoever is that person, whoever's named that person in the IEP team needs to be there so that the changes can be made. Otherwise, yes, it's a discussion.
Okay, so what if you have an IEP that's wrong? What do you do? I mean, you go to the school board, and if it's not fixed, then what do you do? Like, where does it go after that? I mean, if there's something wrong, like if something's not in your IEP that was in your IEP before that just mistakenly got out of your IEP, I mean, what do you do as a parent? You go to the school board?
I would first contact the if there's an IEP liaison, the person designated in the IEP team to be the facilitator. I would go to that person with your concerns. I think putting things down in writing, so sending an email to that person and describing your concerns in that email is where I would start. And then working it out that way. Hopefully it's just, things can be omitted accidentally, and it could be a quick fix like that. If it's more involved at the school district or team members think that that service or whatever it is no longer needed, and there's disagreement, and there's not, the team isn't able to make or reach an agreement at the meeting, then there are resolution procedures and options. One being to request a due process hearing. I can only provide more information on the resolution options, dispute resolution options. They're included in the informational packet. But there are next steps if there is disagreement and agreement can't be reached at a meeting.
I'm sure it's just human error, but it was just never fixed, and we have an incomplete IEP. That was just my main question, because when you bring it to someone's attention, and I was told by an advocate, if it's not in the IEP, then it's really not, it's not bonded, the IEP, because we can't say, oh, you're supposed to get this service and she didn't get it because it's not in the IEP anymore.
Right. Yes, you definitely want it in the IEP. Yes.
Okay. And my next question is, it's far as how would someone go about getting ABA in the schools? I mean, I know they offer speech, they offer OT, they offer PT. Why don't, for autism kids, we don't offer ABA? I mean, why is that?
That's an area, an issue that is getting a lot of attention lately, and I could go into a whole other, discussion just about that. As just to give a quick answer, if it's something that you think is needed in order for your child to receive a free, appropriate public education, then you you bring it to the attention of the IEP team, you call for an IEP meeting, there's a, a discussion, and it is a team decision, but if you don't agree with the decision, there.
I mean, we did ask, but they just said that's not a service they provide. But if you got your own provider to come in, like, how do you go about that? If, does the school board have to approve it? Who has to approve it?
Each school district has their own policy regarding private behavioral health providers providing services to students during school hours on campus. So you could request that policy and go through the school district's process. And, if you're not getting the answers that you're seeking, you go to Families Helping Families. You can contact us. This is an evolving area, relatively new to many school districts. And so it's something that we are getting a lot of questions and concerns from parents about right now.
And my next concern is at these IEP meetings, we have a great teams, we have OTs, PTs, and all these providers, and they give their input. And the last IEP meeting I was at, and they're like, they felt their input wasn't brought back to the school board. Like it was just said in the IEP meeting. You know I am. Yeah. I went to the library one day for one of your meetings. I've been studying this for weeks and months and years. Yes, it's very complicated. It's super complicated. Alexandria goes into the schools. We're signed up for it. We just signed up for that. No, I mean, well, back in the day when we went to school, everything wasn't paid for either, like they are private services now. So if you're getting all these other private services, ABA should be included.
That's okay.
Okay, my other thing was, like, we had a IEP meeting with our team, OT and all that, and they did, they gave us suggestions, but their suggestions weren't brought anywhere. And they were kind of disappointed at the meeting because they suggested it was just something minor, like a teacher. But when it came to them communicating with the school board, like the lady who made the roster, she had no clue. It's just like, I feel that communication, it's kind of lacking sometimes. It's like totally, like one person will say, they work with our child daily, so they know exactly what's going on with our child, but then it comes to the school board, and then it didn't go anywhere. And I mean, I felt the communication falls short in between the school board and the school. And the teachers need more backing because they know our students better than anybody.
So one thing I can suggest again, and we'll often stress, is the importance of putting things in writing and just creating that track record of information and timestamps and who is receiving the information. So
Which we do now.
who's been
We try to do everything on email and stuff like that because it has really, we didn't realize when we come in and verbal and communicate, it just kind of falls between the cracks a lot. So, I mean, I just felt, you know, once you approach this IEP meeting, I figured they would take it from there. And then sometimes I feel like we're overstepping our bounds if we just go further. And then it just seems like we're being, I don't know, like we're being petty. That's what people feel like you're doing if you're constantly pushing. I feel parents shouldn't have to push as hard.
I mean, so a couple of things. As the parent, you are your child's greatest advocate in most cases. So, you know, I commend you for the push. And then school districts, they have a lot of students. So I mean, one way to try and prevent the loss of information and follow through is, again, you can just sum up, I guess, the main points that were covered at the IEP team meeting and then the action items. So what's supposed to happen next? And just, you know, doesn't have to be elaborate or anything. And just send that out in an email. And then if nothing happens, it's an easy way to follow up and just say, just checking on.
Yeah, we did type up at the IEP meeting what did we wanted to discuss, but it just kind of got off track. And then in the IEP meeting, everything was settled. But then when we got to the IEP, actually the piece of paper, it's like they were having problems with the paperwork. And then once we read the paperwork, once it was said and done, it was like wrong. So it, like some of our points didn't even get in the IEP, even though we discussed them in the meeting. That's why I don't understand why we don't have live time, which everybody says, oh, you're supposed to be typing it up, but it's not. It's like ours is handwritten. You know, and I know they were going to a different program and stuff, but like that's where human error falls in really easy when because we miss stuff and it's just human error. But then when it's said and done, you have to call another IEP meeting, get all these busy teachers that are really busy to at time out of their day to come into these meetings when it was just mainly human error. And it's like, how many times do you have to call these meetings just to make sure this IEP is correct? And then it feels like you're just like, I don't know, you're the only person there and all these other people, it almost feels like you feel intimidated. Like if you say anything, you feel very intimidated because everybody else knows. And in the meetings, they're hard. I mean, you go in there, they're like, your child don't do this, this, and this. And you're already emotional, you know, and you're like, oh, you know, and you're trying to stay on point, but it's hard because you're the only one speaking for your child, and it's very difficult, you know. And that's why sometimes I feel like our representatives fall short of our children, not the teachers. They do excellent, and it's just our representatives don't do as good as I feel they should. And then I just feel like, okay, then if you complain, and then that falls back on your child too, and I don't like that. You know, I feel like sometimes if you overstep your bounds, then it can get a little complicated too also. I don't want people to feel like, hey, I'm just being difficult.
I think that those are all very real concerns that are shared by most parents that come to us for seeking legal assistance. You hear a lot of the same thing. So if there isn't a person who is typing into an IEP document during the meeting, if it's handwritten, then maybe if you're taking notes as well.
I have it right here, and it's handwritten. I mean, I have it. I mean, and it's wrong. I mean, not everything in here is wrong, but a lot of it was omitted by accident. It wasn't done on purpose. None of these people in this meeting, they were excellent. They all provide for services for my child. Even though it's not in here, that it was in here, they do it. It's nothing on them. It's just when it comes to the representative that I guess is the special education was over this meeting. And it's handwritten because they were going to a new system and stuff. And when I had talked to the advocate, and they're like, make sure you don't do this. But then when I got into the meeting, I didn't want to feel like, hey, I know what I'm the boss here. I just didn't want to call anyone out. And then it's just, I don't know, once you go to try to fix this stuff, but now I'm curious what's actually in the IEP because we haven't got really a copy. This is the wrong stuff. I mean, of course we signed off on it. It was signed off on. But that's what they tell you to do. They say, okay, here, this is what we discussed in the meeting, sign off on it. And I mean, if you say no, I mean, like, what are we supposed to do?
You don't have to sign it.
I mean, then, so you just call all these people out and you make them waste their time just because. So how from here on forward do we make sure that IEPs are typed and not, you know, just handwritten and stuff? Well, we did.
You can, yes, so you can review it. You can take notes during the meeting of the changes that are supposed to be included in the final version of the IEP. And, you know, if there is handwriting going on during the IEP, request at the end of it to, you know, compare your notes just to make sure that everything is written down on that IEP that's going to be used as the final version. And then you can request a copy of it too. Like once you make sure that it includes everything that was discussed before leaving the meeting, you can request a copy of that handwritten version in case there are any changes made between, you know, that taking that handwritten version and putting it into the system.
Once it's put into the system, do you get a copy of that? What's the time frame you're supposed to get a copy?
You should get a copy of that. So a lot of school systems have switched to just typing it in, and so often parents are able to leave with a copy right then and there. Other times I've seen parents leave with the handwritten, you know, draft, and then follow up with the school district for the final draft.
So when
the school district.
When are you mailed the final draft? I mean, like how long before you get it? Is there a time frame or just?
Shouldn't be that long. Let's see. I'm not sure if there is a provision. I'll have to follow up with you to get the exact timeline, but it should not be long. I believe within 5 days of the completed document, the services are to be implemented. And I would think that that is enough time to receive a copy. Parents also in Louisiana have rights to student records. That of course includes any IEPs, FBAs, and BIPs. So within 10 days of the request, but I don't think it would take that long to get a copy of the IEP. I haven't run into too much objection to getting a copy or delays in that once the IEP meeting is conducted and done. And I I can look and see if there is something specific and follow up with you if you want to reach out to me.
Okay. Definitely, because I'm just curious. I mean, you do get a copy of the IEP, but if it's like a draft and stuff, I mean, you get a copy of it, but if there's mistakes on it and they need to be fixed, and then they need to go back and give you another copy because it's not the right IEP if there's mistakes on it.
Yes. And that isn't totally uncommon to go back and forth following an IEP team meeting to make sure that things discussed actually make it into the document. Like you said, human error, things can happen and it can be incomplete and just require a little follow-up at times to make sure that everything's in there.
Now, as far as back to the ABA, or is that something y'all are looking into to implement in the schools, or?
So that is a discussion that every school district has their own thing going on. There is a law in place now in Louisiana that requires school districts to allow for students to receive services from private behavioral health providers under certain conditions. And each school district was to adopt policies and procedures that conform to the law. I'm hesitant to go into too much detail about that right here over this platform, but yes, it is an issue that many parents are having and that school districts are working out.
Yes,
right now. The law is relatively new.
Yeah, our autism numbers are growing like a lot. So, I mean, and we know that, I mean, from research and stuff, they know that that's a good service. I mean, speech, of course, OT, PT, but ABA, it's pretty much gold standard when it comes to autism. And I mean, this is one disability that's rising more than any, the quickest. I mean, of course, we do have a lot of disabilities out there, but this one is just like almost like a silent disability. You know, you don't see it physically and stuff.
And so the argument or the need in the special education context might stem from this therapy. ABA therapy is needed in order for the student to receive a free, appropriate public education and make educational progress.
So you can put that in the IEP, you're saying, and go into the IEP meeting and address that?
Oh, sure. Yes, that's a great place for ABA as a service, as a therapy. And if a student needs that in order to receive FAPE, then the IEP team is the place to have, one good place to have that discussion. Yes, and where it needs to happen.
Okay. I think that is it. So now how do I get just your email and then you'll send me the package you were talking about before? I mean, like I could get that.
Yes, I believe we have electronic copies. If not, I'll get with you and get a good way to send a physical packet, but I'm pretty sure it exists electronically.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
We have had 2 questions come in from online. And in addition, for anyone in the room, if you're looking for Shannon's email, if you go back to the MPSB Facebook or YouTube and rewatch the video, you'll see that her email address pops up sporadically throughout it on the screen. So that's one place you could get it. Let me pull up. All right, on Facebook we have, what about the need for vocational training for special education students to satisfy the requirements for skills certificates?
The need for vocational training to satisfy the requirements for skills certificates. So is this, I believe the question is referring to an alternative pathway to graduation. Is that? So that is a topic that was mentioned and that we considered including in the training, but that ultimately we didn't go into alternative pathways to graduation. It's something that I am able to follow up with and include in the supplemental information materials. And if you reach out to me via email, I can respond to you directly.
Okay, then we have two comments on the YouTube. Comment number one is make them write it in the parent concern section of the IEP, which I believe is probably addressed towards our last speaker. And Oliver said, good job, Shannon.
Oliver is my my 9-year-old son who thinks that I am who loves YouTube and is just very excited for me to be YouTube. Sorry about that.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Hi, I have a question, but it's more for you to explain to folks to try to keep the dialogue going and help understanding. And to clarify, I am actually with an ABA service provider, and we provide diagnostics across multiple parishes and partner with various school districts. So, with the change in mandatory kindergarten starting at age 5, you're seeing a lot of younger children who maybe wouldn't have been engaged in the school system so early that their families were thinking, yes, my child has some kind of delay and may have been seeking treatment for that and may have already had a diagnosis in place. We also have families that we see that are coming in with 4 or 5-year-olds who are having like first contact, and the school districts are doing a great job of identifying them and starting with the IEP process. But then the families are getting confused because they are not seeing where the medical side and the educational side line up. And this kind of goes back to the question about ABA in schools as well. But the foundation of this is, in particular for kids that are under 7, just this week even, I sat with a mom. We looked at a wonderfully written IEP document, and she's saying, but I don't see the same words. I don't see the same language. I'm not seeing these things identified here, but in fact, what the school team was doing was very clearly identifying based on what the school system was responsible for in communication. For example, ST, alternative or assistive communication devices. They were clearly going through all of those areas to say, okay, what do I need to provide for this child to be successful in a pre-K or a kindergarten classroom? But the parent is saying, but I don't see autism on here. I don't see that, and I believe my child has autism. And so I think we work obviously to help families to understand, and we've reached out with the school board here, even in the folks in special ed in Natchitoches Parish and work across a lot of different parishes, but we constantly are getting these families who are calling in and saying, I need additional diagnostics because I'm not sure my child is getting what they need, when we have them bring in the school documentation and the school systems are hitting on those, those key early components to be able to provide intervention and support in the classroom. And it may be like, for example, that the families get very clear an explanation that says in 3 years we'll do a formal evaluation, and then you may see something more like what you're expecting. So can you just, for the folks who are listening, and I know you went over a lot of details about the law and the different aspects, and we're certainly not saying that the school systems aren't providing or doing things that they should be, like at all, but there is a difference between what you may expect to see, especially for a young child, in terms of what you get in an assessment and intervention plan for education, versus going forward. Does that make sense?
The difference in the types of assessments that might be used in evaluating younger children versus in younger children, meaning like age 4, 5, 6, versus students more middle school age. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and I know this is like a rights question with families. They're saying, like, do I have a right to, additional services? You very clearly listed what is covered in an IEP, which is ST, OT counseling, alternative and assistive communication, and then there is a secondary process where you may get a functional behavior assessment with a behavior intervention plan and all. So that's the thing that we're saying. We're seeing them assessing this stuff. We're seeing that it's happening, but it's not always like this package, I guess, and the words that the families are expecting to see. Does that make sense?
So I think so. It may require a follow-up question, though, if I don't fully respond, so please follow up. But so the school district, part of the evaluation, an evaluation is to cover all areas of suspected disability. So the school district isn't to rely on one source of information to diagnose and offer recommendations. It needs to pull from a variety of sources. And if autism is a suspected area of disability, then there are, assessments and evaluations that need to be conducted specific to addressing that area. So there shouldn't, I guess what I'm saying is, if additional assessments are needed, or if there are needs that are not being met, and there is reason to believe that an additional assessment would provide the information that in order to figure out what is going on and to provide supports for that need, then those assessments need to be done. It doesn't matter at what point the student is in their educational career. Like if an evaluation was done a year ago, but now the student is seeing additional challenges, or if, still something is amiss, then additional assessments need to be done to figure out what is going on. You don't have to wait the 3 years.
And to turn it into a positive, what we're seeing is that sometimes, and again, this is like families understanding the medical definition of something like autism, where it has various components of what goes on to kind of comprise how you get to that diagnosis. And we're seeing that the schools are catching the individual pieces and addressing the individual pieces, but not always in the very young children, like calling it that diagnosis. And so we're having to reinforce with the families, like, you are getting intervention, you are getting support, you know, let's figure out how to do this in a more effective and better way in terms of how we communicate. Which is my second question, which is, can you provide some additional detail? I know you probably did this earlier, but just to reinforce how, if a family is working with somebody who is a medical provider, who may have some information or that they want to participate in their IEP team, how do they go about making that happen, like linking the two together?
So if I think it's great for an ABA provider who has experience with, with the student and the student's challenges, and what is working in therapy to help support those challenges so the student can make progress. Individuals with that sort of experience with the student and background and knowledge are great IEP team participants. And the parent can notify the school, can inform the school that my child's private ABA provider, I would like this person to participate in the next IEP team meeting. And the parent also, part of the parent's participation includes providing, providing relevant information on the student, such as you might find in progress reports or any assessments conducted by the ABA provider. That information should be considered by the IEP team in making decisions about what services the student needs and areas where that student might need additional support, and things that are working, things that are not working. So the parent could reach out in writing to the IEP facilitator to call for an IEP team meeting where the ABA provider participates. They can include in that email an attachment with progress notes, data, whatever information the parent would like to share from the ABA provider about the student can be included in that email also. And then brought to the IEP team meeting.
Questions, comments, concerns, online or in person? Shannon, you feel that we're good? Everything's covered?
Everything's good on this end.
Oh, we did just get a comment. I'd like to say that my son's ABA provider and his DESS teacher has collaborated in recent years, and they offered to video call in on our next meeting. It is possible. The parents just need to voice the request. But other than that comment, I don't have anything else in the chat boxes.
Okay. I think we just hit an hour.
DESS department, you guys good? I can cut the feed now? Good. All right, and that concludes the live broadcast.
Thank you.